I walk, I talk, I shop, I sneeze. I'm gonna be a fireman when the floods roll back. There's trees in the desert since you moved out, and I don't sleep on a bed of bones. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Restless. The Daily Grind, Chapter 165. James arrived in Taunton with a snap of air, replacing the pleasantly warm and dry end of summer afternoon with a hot and muggy atmosphere so abruptly he felt like he'd been dunked in it. "Welcome to Tennessee, sir," a young man greeted him as he stepped off the marked telepad arrival platform. James had actually called ahead instead of just warping in unannounced, and apparently that was enough to get people calling him sir. He decided to stop doing that at once. "First of all, I don't actually hold a rank. You don't need to call me sir," James told the kid. "In fact, let me cut you off before you argue with me. I would prefer if you did not call me sir, all right?" "All right," the kid relented. "JP wanted me to let you know that he's waiting for you upstairs." "Thanks. How's this place going? You doing all right here? I don't think we've met. I'm James." James offered a handshake. This place was, if you just teleported into the middle of it and didn't ask too many questions, a fairly open-plan office floor. Lots of desks, many of them looking like they were bought in bulk for cheap in the 90s. Lots of abandoned paperwork, windows with Venetian blinds. James would have been willing to believe he'd blipped back in time a little bit if he didn't know better and couldn't see the damage that the mechanic's assault had done that hadn't been repaired. If you were paying attention, though, it wouldn't take long to notice that this place had a lot of unconventional memorabilia on the desks. Maybe a few more security lockers than normal, informative posters on the walls that went into a weird amount of detail on things like traffic stops. You know, the kind of stuff you'd find in a police station. "We're doing all right," the kid answered. "I'm Miles, and we have met before." "Have we?" James felt a sense of both guilt for not remembering and frustration at his brain's ongoing breakdown. "Damn it." Miles gave a nervous grin. Sort of. I mean, I've seen you around. You answered some questions about Camercondas." He shrugged. "Anyway, it's not going bad. We're making progress. I am not the right person for the job, though." "Oh, why's that?" James asked, realizing suddenly that he'd been standing waiting for an elevator in a building that didn't have working electricity for the past 2 minutes. "Also follow me and don't say anything," he said, striking out toward the stairs. "Everything Nate's been teaching me has been about information gathering, following, ditching people following me, how to read documents, reading body language, memory tricks, that sort of thing. And now all of a sudden I'm supposed to be some kind of guard? It's weird. I've never even shot a gun before, man. I feel like I'm here by accident," Miles admitted as he followed James, their shoes echoing on the old concrete steps up to the second floor. James nodded as he pushed the stairwell door open. "Yeah, you think that because you're good at noticing things," he said. "Honestly, you're here because we haven't gotten everyone assigned after the rescue, and we need extra hands to do the cleanup. And the city is built for like 20,000 people, and we have 5. He sighed and looked up and down the hallway before Miles pointed casually in the direction that JP was, nodding thanks and starting to walk before continuing to speak. "I don't really know why JP ended up in charge, but I'm guessing he called everyone in just because he trusts you guys to be problem solvers, you know?" "Yeah, but there's monsters out there," Miles pointed out in a strained voice. James hissed out a breath through clenched teeth. "Yeah, I'm not saying JP's logic is sound," he admitted. "Just that he's working with what we've got." "Wait, he trusts us?" Miles narrowed his eyes. "Don't tell him I told you that, but yeah." "Why?" James chuckled. "I mean, he did go out of his way to find people who are clever, who don't need to be able to punch out a monster to be a valuable asset. Like, shit, of the people in the Order we have 4, maybe 5 fighters. I mean actual for-real fighters, not just survivors of things or exploratory delvers who sometimes get in fights." "I still haven't gotten to go on a delve," Miles grumbled. "Really? That's weird," James commented curiously. "Well, once we get a better handle on the place, we're going to start making regular runs of Route Horizon, so get in on that." He clapped Miles on the shoulder as they came to a closed door that read, "Mark Matthews, Chief of Police," across the frosted glass. The magic is pretty fun, though it's actually annoyingly hard to recharge when you teleport everywhere. There's a dungeon here? Miles' eyes lit up. James just grinned at him and rapped on the office door before pushing it open. If you've got another terrible thing to report, fuck off. JP's voice sounded both bitter and overwhelmed in equal measure as James slipped into the room, shutting the door behind him and leaving Miles outside. I mean, I'm here, so that's pretty terrible, James announced himself. JP looked up from the map spread across the desk he was slumped over, and for just a second, James saw a bit of how his friend used to be. Excited, like he was happy to see him, and like he had a plan, with air quotes and a heavily implied sense of foreboding. Then it was gone, and JP just looked tired, like he was unwillingly growing a goatee and pissed off about it, mostly at himself. James, he said, the words still laced with guilt. Welcome to my personal hell. Okay, now that's being melodramatic, James said, infusing his words with as much levity as he could. I've got to ask, why are you in charge here? Nate was busy, JP said. With, nothing. And so I got stuck with it, and now people just keep reporting to me. Yeah, that'll happen, James nodded, looking around for a seat, and finding only the overturned remains of an office. Documents and mementos had been tossed wholesale into tall cardboard boxes in the corner. The shelves now held boxes of granola bars and JP's armor and weapon. And the otherwise bare walls had rough, sketched-out agendas and schedules tacked up on them. He knelt down and braced 2 stacks of fancy-looking legal textbooks against the wall, settling carefully onto them as a makeshift throne. So, what's going on? JP eyed him warily. Are you sure you're okay to be here? He asked. I'm fine, James said. We copied a bunch of the broken bone orbs a couple days ago, and I took enough that even with the diminishing returns, my hand is fine again. He spread his fingers for emphasis with a smile. I think I'm at, 4 total preventions per year, and a couple every month. I mean, not this year, obviously. I've used up those already, but I'm good. Your face still looks like you got set on fire. Yeah, thanks, I know, James rolled his eyes. It's because I got set on fire. It'll heal, so tell me what's going on. I'm just a little worried. I don't want to... JP. James put on his serious voice. I'm not a fucking idiot. You've been taking on stuff like this constantly, and you've been avoiding me as much as possible. I don't know what's going on, but you're not talking to me, and now you're actively trying to refuse help with the... checks notes, city-wide reclamation project, where your staff is 12 people. 13 people. L's here, JP told him. Oh, well, in that case, James threw his hands up. Can you please get over the fact that you nearly killed me and just tell me what you need help with? JP stared at him, face rippling between dull exhaustion and mild anger, before settling in on bemusement. What a weird sentence, he breathed out. Welcome to our lives, James said. Sorry, I guess. Kinda my fault. Yeah, no shit it is. JP pushed himself up and stretched. Okay, so what do you want to know? Progress, issues, logistics, James said simply, leaning back and tapping his head against the hard office wall. JP nodded along. All right, you asked for it. Progress, he sighed. With Dave and Penn doing flyovers and the totems Momo gave us, we are basically positive there aren't survivors left within city limits, JP said. So we're moving to containment and cleanup. The main problem is the necrodes, which are... James held up a hand, interrupting him, and JP sighed again. Necrode, the term for the bone and asphalt soldier creatures. I apparently don't have clearance to read the fucking manual, but according to Reed, they shouldn't be able to multiply. The old man made them using bones with something called the benediction of the pavement, and that needed dungeon power to do so, and I have no interest in benedicting any particular road. So, what we've got is what we've got to deal with, and that's a relief. But there's still a ton of them out there, and holy shit can they be fast when they want to be. He turned to go look out the window at the parking lot, and James noticed that JP was limping. Are you all right? James asked. JP looked back. Oh, fine. He shrugged. Anyway, They haven't actually been hunting actively, but they do wander around sometimes at random, and they will try to kill anything living. Dave's been saving raccoons, who are, let me tell you, not super grateful. So, containment then? Containment indeed. They need the road. Can't be too far from it, as near as we can tell, or maybe they just don't like it. Miles is actually useful, despite what he'll tell you, for figuring shit like that out. We can move safely through the woods around here if we need to. JP turned back to look at his map. The city has functionally one actual road out of it to the highway that runs nearby. Technically, there are two on-ramps within city limits, but they're both gone. It's fucking great, because the last line wrecked the whole thing, and in a way that seems to have severed it from maps, too, so, you know. James winced. That's kind of horrifying. You know, I've never been clear on how some infomorphs, or general effects like that work. Is he just targeting bureaucracy or the recorded data? Can that hit memories, too? Very unsettling. He noted JP giving him an irritated look and laughed. Sorry, I'm interrupting. Existential dread later. Carry on, please. So, JP continued, they can't leave the city, and we mostly just try to pick them off when they're dormant. There should only be about 5,000 left, which, well, James, there's 12 of us. 13, James reminded him. Elle's here, I've heard. Shut the fuck up. JP gave him a welcome grin. Alright, moving on. Problems. Dungeon's not making waves, which is good. The only real problem is the necrodes and the threat of anyone figuring out what's going on here. There's still, shipping routes that are supposed to go through this place. At some point, very soon, someone is going to come to investigate, I think. Memeplex or not, you can't just disappear a city. He shrugged. I hope. So we're against the clock, and I honestly don't think we can move fast enough to make it look like we own this place before it becomes an issue. Do you mind a suggestion? Sure, lay it on me, James nodded, groaning as he stood to also go look at the map that JP had stuck a lot of little colored pins in. JP set his mouth in a line. We deal with the monsters and we leave, he said. Seeing James's raised eyebrows, he elaborated, but didn't back down. I'm not saying we abandon the dungeon, or don't take as much wealth out of here as we can, but I think we should make it our goal to secure this place and deal with the biggest secrecy risk, and then not push our luck. But territory, James gave a puppy dog whine. Dude, you can't just claim a chunk of Tennessee as the spoils of war. Why not? That's how the U.S. got it in the first place. Is that... JP cocked an eyebrow. Is that true? I'll believe you. I just need to know if you're being serious. James tilted his head back. I actually don't know the exact historical details, but technically most of the U.S. is the spoils of conquest. He shook his head. Honestly, I don't think we need our own city. I just want our own city. If nothing else, then as societal proof of concept and a place to test our weird fucking ideas. My weird fucking ideas. But I am willing to accept your recommendation. He sighed. Alright, other concerns? Pivoting back to the situation at hand, JP shrugged. We're alright on food for now. We've been drawing truckloads of the stuff from the closest grocer. Actually, the fact that a lot of the stuff is going to rot is a big problem. If you could get me a blue or a green that could handle that, it'd be great. Power? We've got some generators here, which is part of why we're using this building and not some random house. But the power is out across the city. Water's still good. We're in the water district for the county, and I think the memeplex is working in our favor for once, since no one knows we're here to shut off the water to us. So what do you need the most? James asked. High-caliber guns that can shoot through street? JP said quickly. Or a rocket launcher? You know how you can technically cut a necrode in half if you use this? He tapped the ornate earring that he was wearing. Well, you get one of those a day, and I'm out, and it doesn't work on guns, and cutting something in half involves getting close to it. JP looked away and took a deep breath. We've got both the rifles that are bound to gun bangles, and I already checked, so I know we don't have any more bind charges ready to go, which sucks because did you know this police station had grenade launchers in it? I mean, it still does, but it used to also. He paused, giving a perfect window for James to laugh. But again, no charges for the bangles to reload them, so we're limited. And also, the police don't just have frag grenades sitting around, but just, I don't know, can you rob a National Guard base for me? Probably not yet, James admitted. I mean, actually, probably yes, but I'm not gonna. I'll talk to, um, he trailed off. Do we have a gun guy anymore? James asked sadly. Nate, JP told him, who is busy. Did you send Nate to rob a National Guard armory? I didn't send Nate anywhere, JP said. James gave his friend a look. Great deflection. You know I'm getting wise to your ways. Not wise enough fast enough, JP replied. All right then, more people. There's a lot of work to do, actually. Keeping things from burning down is hard enough. Dealing with cleanup, funeral rites where possible, I need more people. But, I've been to the lair. I already know that we don't have a lot of extra hands available. Response ate up all our good nights. James said, humming in thought. Okay, I have a question for you. I don't think I'd be a good fit for your polycule, JP told him. I'm probably straight. Okay, ow. James felt a small amount of tension that he hadn't realized he'd been holding on to relax a bit as JP slipped into the old habits of teasing. No, my question was going to... Sorry, probably? Ask your question. How comfortable would you be with problems? James asked suspiciously. JP glared at him. Oh, well, when you say it with the ominous tone and that stupid fucking smirk, how could I say no? He demanded. Sure, bring it on. I've got so many problems, maybe if you bring me more, they'll cancel out. Great, James told him. I'll be back later tonight. He pushed off the desk and stepped back, but met JP's eyes before turning away. Hey, are we good? JP sighed, and the mood in the room dampened again. I have no idea, he said. I don't even know what I am anymore. I spent almost a week being a field commander. James, I missed an invitation to a gala to patrol a perimeter. I skipped poker night to organize search shifts. Is this who I am now? JP looked at James, and James suddenly realized the question wasn't rhetorical. There was a note of urgency in JP's voice, something that said that he really was asking for somebody else to help him define himself. You know, James told him kindly, you're allowed to be the kind of person who's annoyed at missing poker night. He tried to offer JP a grin. You can also be the kind of person that everyone looks up to because you're a good leader, even if they... Sorry, I gotta interrupt my own speech. A gala? It was an end of summer soiree, JP said sadly. The opportunities. Do we just not pay you enough? James asked, perplexed. Not that kind of opportunity, James. JP shook his head, staring off into the middle distance. You wouldn't understand. You're domestic now. Are you... No, I refuse to understand you, James decided. Look, I'm not going to tell you who you are, aside from a little weird but also my friend. You're on your own there. But you are my friend, and you don't need to camp out in a police station fighting a really weird zombie apocalypse to prove it. JP made a non-committal noise. Then he looked back down at the desk covered in map markers and granola bar wrappers. Well, maybe I'll do it anyway. I've got momentum going now, he said. Yeah, we're good. Get out of here. Bring me more problems. See you tonight, James said, cracking the door just enough to slip out and giving JP an intentionally ominous cackle as he left. Smirk's not stupid, he muttered to himself as he shut the door behind him. Then he paused in the hall, pretending he didn't notice Miles casually loitering, pretending to be checking his phone, about exactly as far away as someone could reasonably get if they had a few seconds of warning before the door they were eavesdropping on was opened. James shook his head, pulled out his telepad, wrote the landing point for the lair on it, and ripped the page off. He left Tennessee the same way he entered, taking with him only some information, a terrible idea, and an appreciation for the lack of humidity at his destination. James snapped into existence again in the empty bathroom of a hotel room. He hadn't known exactly where Karen was keeping the survivors of Taunton until he needed to ask so he could talk to some of them, but now that he was here, he had to admit that the Crown Royale was a pretty dang nice place. For all that Karen talked a big game about budgets and spending, she still made sure that Recovery did their jobs with a little style. Cutting off his admiring of the glitz in the hotel bathroom, James adjusted his collar and walked out into the suite itself. A set of panicked yells was what greeted him as he closed the door behind himself, as first one person noticed and then the rest joined in. 4 people shouting and one person by the door who seemed completely unfazed behind his sunglasses. "Yes, hi," James said, mostly just chewing the scenery until they quieted down. "You cannot be surprised by this." "Where did you come from?" a woman yelled, crouching behind one of the generously sized beds. One of the room's other residents, a young man who James was pretty sure was named Kirk, had interposed himself between James and the others. "I came from the bathroom," James said, like that was obvious. "Also, calm down. I'm not here to hurt anybody." He grabbed one of the padded chairs around the room's small breakfast table and plopped himself into it, kicking his feet up onto the end of one of the beds. "Hey, Matt," he said, addressing the nonplussed man by the door. "How's it been?" "Boring," Matt replied. He was standing in a relaxed posture, but the way he carried himself made it seem like an implicit threat. James didn't much care for the response member, mostly because of that vibe of violence he carried with him. Also, partly because he seemed to be one of those people that thought that wearing sunglasses all the time made them look tough. But he was one of the people who was working as a rotating guard for this group, and he was pretty effective at it. James gave him a sympathetic nod. "Well, I'm here to fix that," he said, turning back to the other 4. "How have you been?" he asked the group of cultists. Well, ex-cultists now. These 4 people, seemingly both the youngest and oldest pairs that were part of the cult, were the last remaining members of the Mechanics' cadre of minions. There had been 15 of them, initially. Well, initially being when James and Nesh rolled into town. 2 of them had failed to apprehend James due to an Alana-shaped miscalculation and had been murdered by the mechanic when they'd reported back. 4 of them had fled from El's home, where they had been held prisoner during the last fight, and had been promptly killed by the rampant asphalt, so also murdered by the mechanic. 1 had taken his own life afterwards. 4 of them had chosen the option that James was extraordinarily uncomfortable with, taking the order up on the offer of Planner's unique services as an infomorph. With Planners surgically taking memories from them, assisted by their own desires, and wiring into their minds small personal routines, leaving them unaware of their own involvement, their own culpability. Just another group of survivors of a traumatic event who didn't really know what happened, albeit ones who would get over it a little faster than the others. That left 4 ex-cultists who hadn't decided what they were going to do. And for James, they were the least surprising people to be in that position, because all 4 of these people were the ones who hadn't really understood what the mechanics' plans were, who weren't in it for profit or power, and who had just wanted to protect and explore the dungeon that the Order had since named Route Horizon. The others had been cruel or greedy, and for those that had chosen the mind wipe, James felt absolutely justified in asking for the removal of their worst habits as payment, along with the actual ownership of any properties they had acquired, which actually did leave the Order as the legal owner of a big chunk of Taunton. But these 4, well, it was hard to say they were just people who had tried to help and been misled. They weren't innocent. They had fucked up. Big time. And they'd still tried to do good in that ends justify the means sort of way that left a sour taste in James's mouth. In his mind, the end was the means. When you got to the end of the road, you weren't going to end up anywhere except where the road had been taking you. If your path to victory involved child kidnapping and murdering witnesses, you were always headed somewhere evil, no matter what you lied to yourself about. So it wasn't a surprise when none of them answered James immediately. "We're fine," the older woman, Dorothy, said, crossing her arms and meeting his eyes with a steely gaze. "Or have your guards not reported that to you?" "First off, no," James answered. "We're obviously keeping you under guard, but think of it like patient confidentiality. Matt won't tell me anything about what you've been doing if it's not a direct security risk." He jerked his thumb over his shoulder toward the guard. Also, fine? Really? He crossed his own arms in response. The two stared at each other for a long moment before the others cut in. Tell him, Kirk said quietly to the girl with short brown hair and a grim expression sitting next to him on the bed. James shifted his attention, and the girl took a breath to steady herself. Not fine, she said. We're all having nightmares, even... She flipped off the older woman. Even Dorothy. Yeah. We're fucking... None of us are fine. Everyone we thought we could trust is either dead or gone, Kirk said with an exhausted and resigned tone. And is that our fault? God, we know what happened to Taunton, to everybody. His words trailed off and he shook his head. Now Dorothy uncrossed her arms and turned away from James to move to sit next to her companion, pulling the young man to a reassuring hug. She looked back and in a less hostile voice told James, We've been informed what the death toll was. She shook her head. And we are partially responsible for that. Your offer of forgetting is generous, but we'd forget, the other man in the room said with a shrug, walking past James to idly rummage through the suite's kitchen fridge. This hotel was way nicer than James expected. It was basically a small apartment, and the rotund man seemed happy to raid what the Order had stocked their food supply with. We'd forget everything. We talked about it, the younger girl said. With the others, too, before they... They were cowards, Dorothy spat out. They were afraid, Kirk countered her. Mostly of you, actually, he nodded to James. Oh? James gave small encouragement to keep talking. Kirk took it and elaborated. Yeah, they figured it was just a matter of time before you killed us for what we did. He still didn't have any emotion in his voice except quiet resignation. This place does kind of feel like a last meal sort of deal. And then you get our globes, too. Sorry, what? James raised his eyebrows. The others gave either shocked or furious looks directed at both James and Kirk in equal measure, as Kirk just shrugged. What we call the place where the spell map bits go. We've all got 'em, and we know that you can take 'em away if we die, so we all just kind of figured. Huh, James said. That's going to be weird for the people who took the memory wipe option, he mused. Awkward. Not going to kill you, though, in case you were wondering. He sighed and pushed himself up to his feet, wincing at how sore his soles still were. Okay, so here's the deal, he said as he started pacing. We have no idea what to do with you. Excuse me? From her expression, this was apparently the most surprising thing Dorothy had heard in the last 60 years, which was impressive given that she was a wizard. We won't kill you, specifically. Ideologically, we are opposed to punitive incarceration, but we lack the resources to really commit to some kind of rehabilitation and therapy arrangement. Not that I think you actually need that. It seems like you're here and not out there because you already feel guilty. But you really fucked up, and without actually knowing what you can all do, letting any of you just wander off seems like a recipe for potential disaster. James looked around, meeting their eyes, with the exception of the guy who was more focused on making his sandwich. So let me ask you something. What do you want? Time machine, Sandwich Guy said without hesitation. Then he waited a beat and asked, Do you have one? I'll take that if you do. Sorry, no dice, James said. Anyone else? Dorothy stood and started pacing herself. What do we want? We just want to leave, she snapped at him. That's not what I want, Kirk cut in. James turned to him with a cocked eyebrow. I want to go back, he said. Back to the horizon. All I wanted was that. But that's done, so now I want to go back. Explore the roads, find new spells, maybe die. He shrugged at that, like dying was just another part of a road trip. Do you know how it feels? He asked James, seemingly honestly. To have the whole world go back to being boring? I have depression and also access to an infinite office full of living staplers and cubicle towers, James responded. Kirk nodded at him. Then you get it. That's what I want. I want to go back. I just want the nightmares to stop, the other girl said. But I don't want to forget either. Kirk's right. It's too special. And also, I want to try to help. Undo what we did. I know we can't, but I... She sniffed as she trailed off, blinking tears out of her eyes. James wasn't sure if she was as completely honest as Kirk was being. He probably should have brought Alana along. Behind him, Sandwich Guy spoke around a mouthful of food, adding, I wouldn't mind unfucking some of our mess, but I also won't forget. My fuck-ups are mine. Got that? All right, James said. I've got a deal for you then. They looked at him, expectantly and apprehensively in equal measure. You work for us, he said. Indefinitely, for now. We've got a whole city, most of which we own, that needs cleanup and security, and if you were honest with me, then I know at least 2 of you have spells that could help. After that, well, you can stay with us if you like. We're going back into the Horizon, and other places like it. We're going to save people. If you fit in, if you want to join, you can be part of that future. Otherwise, I don't know, count it as penance done and make your own way in the world. We won't stop you unless you start hurting people again. Who are you? The girl that James was aware could drive a car through a building without issue asked. Are you the government? No one's actually told us. You keep saying us, and what is that? Oh, James grinned, happy that he got to be the one to explain this. We're the Order of Endless Rooms, he told them. We're a little like you, but a little bigger and a lot cooler. And no, we aren't the government. Well, not yet. Yet? Yet, James confirmed. So, what do you say? You in? I know Matt over there is itching for you to say yes so he can go get in a fight with one of the monsters still hanging out in Taunton. The ex-cultists shared looks with each other before their more matronly member spoke. We'll need some time to... Dorothy got through that much of her sentence before the others said, yes, yeah, and sounds good to me. She stared at them with a frustrated glare before turning back to James. All right, I suppose they don't need time to talk about it at all, she said. I'll give you my answer after some consideration. All right, cool, James said, tossing Matt a telepad with an address already on it. Whenever you're ready, you can get out of here. No rush. Now, I've got to get going. Does anyone have any questions before I blip out? Why? Kirk asked. Why what? Why even bother with us? Why this? Why forgiveness, or whatever it is you're offering? Oh, easy, James said. Because everyone keeps trying it the other way, and the world they've built doing that fucking sucks. So we're going to do something new. So, yeah, you have a debt to pay back, but you already know that. I'm just here to help you make it work. He shrugged. Anyway, I'm out. Good luck. And then with a flick of his wrist, he dropped a telepad into his hand, tore the page, and blinked out of the hotel room. Karen could handle the checkout, and James still had more people to catapult into the mess that this whole road trip had delivered to the Order's doorstep. There was a secret that James had kept from his friends for a long time. Even the people who were so close to him that he called them family, who shared his bed and made him breakfast, were kept in the dark about a crucial part of him, especially from Sarah, and doubly especially from the massive white ball of excitement named Aberdeen that Sarah had adopted into their shared apartment. James was allergic to basically anything with fur. As he popped into the cracked asphalt of the parking lot under the shade of an oak tree that was probably older than he was, James considered that he might be the wrong person for this particular job. But he was available, and this was technically his job anyway. A small silver bell hanging off the door by a dog collar jingled cheerfully as he pushed open the glass door to the front reception area of the vet's office. Instantly, the smell of a building made for cats and dogs hit him like a wall, alongside, almost paradoxically, the clean scent of disinfectant and that weird tang that he always associated with hospitals. Within seconds, a golden retriever with a tail wagging fast enough to generate lift had plowed into his legs and demanded attention, which James was only too happy to give, scratching behind the ears and making a mental note to wash his hands very soon. There were actually a few animals in the lobby, a couple other smaller dogs and a pair of cats, one of which was in a carrier on the linoleum counter. All but the dog that had come up to greet James were napping in a fenced pen in the corner, which took up more of the room than the chairs for waiting humans. After the golden retriever had gotten its pets and sufficiently smelled James, it headed back to the pen through the open gate and lay down in the middle of the floor, forming a line of fur with the other sleeping animals across the middle of the penned area. He looked at the napping critters for a while with a concerned frown on his face, and the black cat in the middle of the line looked back at him with feline contempt. This staring contest could have gone on longer, but a voice broke him out of his focus. "Hi there, I'm Dr. Morris. What brings you in today?" James jolted a little and turned to see a short woman with messy black ponytail that looked suspiciously like his own hair. She was wearing a white coat with a ton of pockets over a set of scrubs and giving James the kind of smile that you tended to only get on people who had already decided the day was going to be fun. "Hey there." James matched her grin and offered a handshake. "I'm James Lyle. I owe you a few favors. Or a lot of money," he said. She gave him a confused look as she shook his hand. "Oh, are you here for an owner's account? My desk person isn't in today, but we can make an appointment." "Oh, no, sorry." James bit his lip sheepishly. "To be clear about this, I'm here about the giant invisible panther sleeping in the corner of the room." He nodded toward the animal pen. "Which, not gonna lie, is actually making me super nervous, but I assume you know what you're doing?" Dr. Morris froze, tensing up and giving him an appraising look as she took a short step backward behind the desk. In the corner of the room, James suddenly became very aware of the low rumbling sound coming basically out of nowhere, and also the growls from the dogs. "Who are you from?" she asked cautiously. "Order of Endless Rooms," James answered, a name I am still getting used to being real, as much as I've always dreamed of talking like a character from a fantasy novel. He kept his smile in place, cool and disarming as he could be. "You've helped us out at least 3 times, actually. I know you patched up Deb when she got hurt. She said you were aware of the weirdness we had going on, and also, you know, giant cat." "Oh, it's you!" The vet let out a relieved sigh. "I'm sorry. I've been panicking for a week about someone trying to kill me for knowing too much." I'm going to say that's not a thing that happens anymore." James was suddenly uncertain. "That said, you've got a hell of a bodyguard, Dr. Maris." He nodded toward the invisible feline. She snorted. "Amy, please. And I'd hope I've bought some loyalty, given how much it costs in cat food." The veterinarian shook her head. "He eats a lot." She met James's eyes, placing the palms of her hands on her desk. "A lot." James chuckled nervously. "Well, on behalf of all the local random wildlife that has not been eaten, thank you. Also, seriously, thank you for this in general. I don't think many people would do more than just scream and run away, much less take care of something like that." "Yeah, well," she shrugged. "I was already kind of primed for it. Um," Amy looked at him with some worry. "Are you here to take him back?" "The cat? Oh, James cleared his throat. "Would you be shocked to learn that we don't really have a place to keep something like that?" "Yes. Because we... Wait, really?" "Yes. Don't you have, like, a magic farm or something?" "I have no idea why you would think that," James admitted. "We have a small industrial commercial flex space that has too many basements and not enough room for the increasing number of weird members that we have," he told her. "I was actually going to ask if you wanted to keep..." "Yes," Amy yelped, like if she took too long to answer, then James might rescind the offer. "Okay, well, good." James nodded and laughed. Across the room, the line of sleeping dogs shifted as the cat moved. "Yeah, we're talking about you," Dr. Maris called over, in that kind of sing-song voice that humans almost instantly reverted to when speaking to pets. "Are you behaving yourself?" A small, pure black cat padded out of the gate of the animal pen, making a strange stepping motion as it did so. Anyone not paying attention wouldn't have noticed the untouched fence to the side wobble a bit as the cat passed by, something brushing over its top end. The vet came out from around the counter and walked over to the cat, but rather than bending down to pet it, she instead extended an arm to the air overhead and to the right. James watched as her body shifted, while the small cat below bobbed its head like it was nuzzling something. "That is both adorable," James said, "and also terrifying." "Welcome to my new life," Amy told him. "So, what do I do?" "Like in what way?" "Well, I don't know anything about the care and feeding of magical invisible tigers," she admitted with a roll of her eyes. "Also, am I even allowed to keep him? Is he intelligent? Can you help with the times when he wants to be really active? I have so many questions." James laughed and idly scratched his nose. "Oh yeah, welcome to my life," he shot back to her. "To all of those? Your guess is as good as ours. Although we can help you cover food costs, we actually do owe you a lot of money, like I said." James stepped over to near her and waited with a little anxiety that he tried to quash as the cat turned, an unseen huff of breath moving his shirt while he was cautiously and curiously sniffed. "Actually, we do have a farm-esque plot of land. We can arrange transport there and back whenever you need space for him to adventure around." "That would be great," Amy sighed. "Actually, question," James said. "Do you know if he likes other people?" "He's actually really friendly," Dr. Maris told him. "He knows he's not supposed to bother people who come in, but it's hard sometimes. I think there's more than a few people who think the building is haunted now." James nodded. "Okay, well, I ask because we've got another big space, too. Actually, we've kind of got a city." Uh, sure, okay." Amy just nodded and accepted that, like she'd gotten used to believing the bizarre and moving forward. "I bring this up because we're doing some recovery work there," James told her. "And a cat that can move at 30 miles an hour and topple cars would actually be a pretty valuable helper in terms of providing a little extra security while we're down there." He cleared his throat. "If you were interested in taking a vacation, maybe." Dr. Maris eyed him like he'd grown an extra head. "Are you offering me a job?" "Technically, I was going to do that part later. It's less a job and more a calling, an affiliation with a salary. I don't know what we are." "I have a job," Dr. Maris told him. "I like my job." "I admit, hiring people who aren't currently unemployed or have recently lost everything in their lives is a little new to me," James said. "But we're not asking you to give up your current job." He shrugged as he tried to explain. "We want you to be independent from us, but know that you can rely on us for help. We like what you're doing, both mundane and magical. We want to help you keep doing it. We've got some resources we can share, and mostly all we ask is if someone needs help, you give it." Amy propped her hands up on her hips and glowered at him. "I already would have done that," she protested. "Yeah, and now we'll give you very specific superpowers to use while doing it." James grinned at her. "Also, you can make friends with a giant snake thing made out of cables. Is that a plus for you?" "Yes." "Look," James said, still smiling but shifting his tone away from joking. "I'm trying to solve two problems at once here. If you're not interested, that's all right. We'll still help you with upkeep on the cat, and... Does the cat have a name?" he asked, suddenly realizing he hadn't checked. "Romulus." "Because of..." James racked his brain. "I thought Rome had a wolf-based creation myth. Or am I misremembering?" "Because of Star Trek. He's cloaked." The doctor seemed a little too pleased with herself. "I actually haven't seen much Star Trek," James admitted, ducking his head. "Don't tell any of my friends. I'll lose my nerd card." He laughed and she joined in before he continued trying to be serious. "But really, we'll still help. No strings attached. But also, if you want a part-time role hanging out with weird creatures and exploring strange places, and maybe assisting with the back-breaking labor of cleaning up an abandoned city, that's on the table. It'd be kind of a big personal favor to me, too, if one of the people I sent JP's way today was someone we already know we can rely on." I'm not sure why you think that's a compelling sales pitch. Also, who's JP? He's in charge of the city thing. Okay. Amy nodded, running both hands through the unseen fur of the cat, which had, judging by the position of the smaller feline projection, laid down and rolled slightly onto her legs. How dangerous is it? Pretty dangerous, probably, James admitted. That's part of why I'd like a 600-pound panther-shaped security blanket. He's actually closer to 1,900 pounds, the veterinarian replied. I had to lie to a truck weighing station to get that checked. She paused in her petting to think, but resumed when she got a light bump from the cat's muzzle to her chest. This is kind of a lot all at once, Amy admitted. James could understand that completely. He nodded to her. There's no rush, honestly, but hey, here's my number. You can let me know when you've decided. He reached out tentatively and pet at what he hoped was the right patch of air, rewarded for his attempt by the feeling of warm fur under his fingers and the rumbling purr that felt like a car idling. Anyway, I've got to go. Oh, if you could get your expenses written up, that'd be helpful. We can start paying that off for you. Thanks, Amy said. It really is a lot of cat food. And steak. And do you know how much pet shampoo it takes for something this size? Is it a lot? James ventured a guess. She nodded vigorously. It is a lot, yes. But also, yes, I will call you when I decide. I think I just need some time. James nodded and smiled. All right, well, I gotta get going. A lot of meetings today. Nice to meet you, though, and thanks again for taking care of Rom. Any time, the veterinarian smiled back. James reached into his coat and pulled out his telepad, making sure the address to the lair was correct before he pulled the page and vanished out of the lobby of the small veterinary practice. He arrived on the telepad platform with a snap of air, stepping off quickly to make sure he was out of the way, and moving past the response team that had just returned themselves to head upstairs. He had just pushed open the door to the lair's common area when his phone rang. James didn't recognize the number, so he answered with a curious, "Hello?" If you had told me you could teleport, I probably would have said yes sooner, Amy Morris's belligerent voice told him. James grinned. Pack your bags and clear your calendar, he said. There's a lot to do, and we are so understaffed right now. As James left the response basement and telepad landing platform for the third time that day, he passed Alana in the stairwell. After a quick peck of a kiss that got applause from the people they were blocking the way of, Alana pivoted and walked with James back up to the common area. Have you been settling back in? James asked her, as she grabbed a reusable water bottle from the communal fridge, offering him one as well. Alana gulped down half the bottle before giving a puff of an ah and flipping the cap back on. It's been not even 2 days, she told him with a small amount of snark. What? No. James narrowed his eyes, unsure if he was being messed with, going insane, or caught in a time loop again. It's been like 2 weeks almost. We took a few days to recover, did the office on around Tuesday, then the sewer on Friday. What day is it? Alana counted off on her fingers, mouthing along words with James's count. Oh, she said. Well, then I guess I'm settling in well? Because I just kind of got caught up doing stuff. What are you doing today? I'm rounding up a lot of the people who know about us, rapidly recruiting them, smushing them together into a makeshift crew of vagabonds, and then handing them over to JP to be both his problem and a solution to his other problems, James said, all in one breath. Why not just recruit new people? Alana asked. Partly because we're doing that anyway. I think I'm actually supposed to start interviews tomorrow, but also because new people have an adjustment period, and people who are already exposed to the weird stuff don't need to spend a month coming to terms with the existence of Camercondas. Alana nodded understandingly. Camercondas are kind of a big deal around here, huh? I mean, James shrugged. They're our friends? I've gotten so used to seeing them just as part of our lives. It's honestly weird to me when I go to other places and there aren't any. He thought about it for a second. I should see if any of them want to go to Taunton. I don't think I saw any while I was there, but then I mostly just went in a straight line to harass JP and left. You ever worry that teleporting everywhere loses you some of the value of travel? Alana asked him curiously as she sipped her water. James fidgeted with the cap of his own bottle, leaning against the counter and watching some of their summer interns setting up a few tables for a mock debate that was taking place later that night. I mean, I did just try to take a road trip, he said. And if I'd teleported... He swallowed. Hard. If we just blinked there, we might have been in time to keep a few thousand people alive, so maybe travel isn't all it's cracked up to be. I guess, Alana said, staring at the ground. But then you would have missed me, and Jean and Ava. Maybe that whole thing with Cammy, too. You also, if I have the timeline in my head right, wouldn't have the spell that you used to fight the dragon and break through the mechanic anyway? She shrugged. I'm not, saying everything happens for a reason, because that always seems like a bullshit cop-out, but reasons are why things happen the way they do. Wishing you'd done it differently, you're just wishing to erase the bad stuff, assuming nothing would have happened to fuck it all up, right? I guess, James said, staring up at the ventilation pipes overhead. But I don't, want thousands of people to die. He rolled his head to look at his partner. It's my thing. Alana barked a sudden laugh and clapped a hand on his shoulder, strong fingers massaging the tense muscles. I know, it's why I like you, she said simply. So, what are you up to? Oh, I was actually going to talk to Anne if I could find her, Alana said. So, you know how we spend a lot of time in armor these days? I'm aware of it, James nodded. We need better armor. I'm honestly annoyed we don't have a magic coat of protection yet. You have shield bracers, shut up. Anyway, the body armor we have... Alana deftly blocked his attempt to derail the conversation. It's kind of the worst fucking thing ever. I was hoping maybe the one other woman who spends all day in it could help me out with that. Worst how? James asked. So, you know how I've got tits, right? Alana asked, giving James an inscrutable look. James paused and tried to look just as enigmatic back at her. I've been informed of this, yes, he said. Sources say they're very nice, especially when you... Yes, thank you, moving on. Alana's sarcasm crumbled around her. The point is, the armor wasn't designed for that. Even my, let's be real here, not very voluptuous form still ends up getting pinched and crushed in ways that I don't appreciate. Setting his bottle on the counter with a metal clink, James frowned and thought, we can just buy a different model of armor for you. We've got the money. Would you believe me if I told you that commercially available body armor is almost exclusively designed by and for men? Alana asked him. I mean, that sounds kind of horrible, and I'm prepared to believe most negative things about the world these days. James shrugged. What about designing our own? We already used the press machine to make replacement plates. Yeah, kind of what I was going to ask Anne about. I know there's other delvers or responders who also deal with this, but she's the only one I kind of know that well. Oh yeah? That's cool. Alana gave a small laugh. I mean, we've talked a few times, mostly about dumb stuff, but it's always fun enough, I guess. I don't know. You're describing friendship. That's friendship, what you're saying there. James gave her a long, suffering look, mouth stretched into a line. Well, hopefully my friend will have some advice on making the plate edges not dig in so much to the side of my boobs, Alana said, shifting her weight from foot to foot. It's either that or get breast reduction surgery, because not wearing the armor is not an option. Oh, I actually know about this one. You're on the Oregon Health Plan, right? You can just have that. I mean, it takes a couple preliminary appointments, but you can set up a surgery. Though, I'm not sure if it's something that's being done right now, what with the whole hospital situation. James looped his hand around in the air, trying to figure out the somatic motion to describe a global pandemic. Alana eyed him. You were just saying you liked them. Now you're okay with them vanishing? I mean, they're not my breasts. James rolled his eyes. So yes, I'm fine with it. Well, I'm not. I like having boobs, Alana retorted. I'm not sure what side I'm supposed to be defending here, James exclaimed. Also, we do have a machine that makes the armor shells, and we have a ton of extra Kevlar mesh that goes in them. We can make you better armor. I know! That's what I was going to talk to Anne about! Alana grabbed James by the shoulders and shook him lightly. Why are we yelling? He burst out, grabbing her own shoulders and returning the motion. You two are such fucking dorks, Momo said as she passed by, sliding through the front desk's access door to get to the fridge, and passing close enough that James suddenly had a moment of knowing the names and locations of everyone in the building, every phone number within 2 blocks, and the lunch menu. Hey, you done with those? I'm heading back to the kitchen. She pointed at their bottles, and both James and Alana calmly released each other, handed Momo their water bottles, and let her pass by, then reached out to grab each other's shoulders again in the exact same formation as before. They both gave Momo an expectant look. She just snorted with a smile on her face. See? Dorks, she said. Yeah, I think I'm settling in fine, Alana admitted as Momo headed away and she and James untangled their arms. I remember almost everything, but that's less important, I think. It's just so fucking nice here. My brain keeps overvaluing the last few months, so I have this impression in my head of people being generally shitty, and now this, I guess. Worst thing I get called in a day is a dork, you know? And I remember that, but now I'm living it again, and I like it. I like it too, James smiled. Anyway, go get your armor settled. He turned and headed toward the elevator before spinning on his heel and walking backward to call back to Alana as she opened the door to the response basement. Oh, question. What are you doing for the next week or two? Lots of stuff. Why? Do you want to babysit a ragtag band of vagabonds as they grow into a valuable addition to the Order? He asked her. Absolutely not, Alana called back from the stairs. I hate Tennessee and you can't make me go back, she added, right before the door swung shut and clicked close, sealing her away from James. Damn it, James said. Nate said the same thing. The research basement had become messy. James noticed immediately as he stepped off the elevator. He'd known for the last week of being back, but it had somehow gotten worse in the time he had focused on other things. Like some kind of perverse game of red light, green light, where every time he blinked, more clutter accumulated. It wasn't like it was turning into a garbage heap down here or anything. The place was still clean, probably cleaner than they'd found it. Someone was keeping the floors swept and the small, increasingly impossible garden around the tree neat. But someone else was also stacking banker's boxes full of random status quo documentation by the elevator, storing pallets of bricks and plywood on the side of the already fairly cramped hallways, and leaving random objects on every available flat surface of roughly table height. It reminded James a lot of his apartment. In terms of the stuff on tables, anyway, he didn't keep construction materials sitting around in case he needed them. After an unintentional dance with a camera conda that was also trying to slip past a choke point in one of the halls, James emerged into the main floor space that the investigators, researchers, engineers, and historians of the Order currently shared. It, too, was a chaotic mess, though more in the sense that it had a lot of moving pieces, less than clutter. Reed had a whole line of people waiting for him to give them a slice of his time. One of the new engineers was having, and losing, a debate with a camera conda about AI ethics. Someone was giving Momo a status update about one of the grown program chips. A manifested version of Planner was watching and taking careful records of Orange Totem design plans. And there were a half-dozen other sources of movement and sound beside that, all vying for James's attention. It was interesting, and he was here for basically none of it. He instead took one of the relatively clear corridors around the outside of the space, heading to the far side of the room and the secure containment vault behind it. He almost got there without being spotted and interrupted, though fortunately it was Momo and not someone who was going to ask him to approve some kind of bizarrely irresponsible project. Hey, you, I need to get everyone on board with something stupid, Momo said, just as James opened his mouth to say hi, shattering his hopes. He closed his mouth and frowned at her. So much for his high esteem for his friend and colleague. I'm almost certainly going to say no, James told her. But alright, let's hear it. You have limited time because I'm here for something, and it's almost 7 and I haven't eaten in... As he thought, he realized he couldn't come up with a number. His stomach growled at him. I'm hungry, he corrected. Anyway, what's up? I want you to let me build an AI doctor, Momo said, a determined look on her face. Nameless is degrading and I can't fix it, and there isn't a lot else I can do. I wanted to get them an authority, but they're all going to Camercondos over the next couple of days, and Reed doesn't know when any new ones will grow, or if we can even bond one to a life form that doesn't have a normal body, so I want to try to make a new digital intelligence that can fix Nameless. Please. James took a close look at her, and he saw a girl who hadn't slept in a long time. We don't make life to be tools, he told her softly. But we sure do use them when it happens anyway, Momo snapped out bitterly, and then jerked back, looking like she regretted what she said. I mean, She took a step away and looked around for anything to focus on that wasn't James. I'm not going to be mad at you, James told her, still in that same calm voice. He was getting good at staying cool for situations like this, which wasn't experience he'd ever really wanted. But we don't make life to be tools, and if you did make another AI, there's no promise it wouldn't suffer the same degradation this one is going through. He didn't draw the parallel to aging in general. He felt like his goal of eliminating mortality was pretty well stated. It was more about the time frame of how quickly the AI had begun to fall apart. No, Momo, I'm not going to okay that, and I think you know it. It's not fair, Momo yelled, looking like she wanted to punch the nearest wall, but finding nothing but hanging corkboards and shelves within arm's reach. It's done so much for us, and I'm just letting it die. She sniffed and rubbed the edges of her eyes that had begun to run out of tears hours ago. It doesn't even really care, so I guess I'm just wasting everyone's time. The words came out angry and bitter, as if there was any other emotion that could possibly hold. It isn't fair, James agreed. We'll divert an authority to you, see if that can work. Any other resource you need, honestly. Red orbs, we can prioritize that. Has running the program's Nameless One in the dungeon helped? Is there some kind of code-based healing potion? That would fit the pattern. He muttered the last sentence quietly before realizing that one was maybe a little bit too much optimism. What, just like that? Momo asked, her thoughts only just catching up to the fact that James had okayed an authority for her just like that. Yeah, he said. The AI's dying, the Camercondas aren't. It's worth it to see if... Ah. He paused. Yeah, you thought it too, didn't you? Momo said. What if the AI dies and the authority goes with it? They don't start as people, same as most infomorphs, James said. We don't even know if they can become people, not really. It's weird, it's ethically uncomfortable, but it'll be okay. It's not evil. He raised a hand and caught Reed's attention from across the room and then indicated Momo. Reed nodded once and then went back to his petitioners. There, James told her. I am curious about the programs, though, and if that's a little too much right now, that's fine, but maybe I could get a list, a spreadsheet, maybe? It could save lives. Yeah, I can do that now, Momo said. We did try them, just to see. They're all kind of like the CD that Anesh made a bunch of copies of. You run the program, you get immunity to something, but the portion, processor load, usefulness, all random. As expected, James said with a nod. Yeah, Momo rolled her eyes. Whatever Virgil got, he either aced some challenge for it or just got super lucky because... James winced. Oh good, the part where things go wrong. It's not that bad, Momo protested. But it takes one CD tray and any PC made after 2010 can run it. Anesh is obviously testing it, and I think he got a computer around here that we should be mining Bitcoin on, so that's pretty cool. Momo shook her head. Most of these are clunkier, like they need dedicated hardware. I don't know how much we're willing to invest in that. She gnawed at her lip. Also, a lot of them suck. Like what? James was curious. Like the one that gives immunity to wood? Momo suggested. There's also one that gives protection against hammers, so that's vague. Oh, they also both are hugely inefficient programs. What are the good ones? James asked, waiting outside the vault doors to finish this conversation. And how comically inconvenient are they? Heat, lightning, and drowning, Momo rattled off. Lightning or electricity? Lightning. James clicked his tongue. All right, so heat and drowning then, he said. Weren't there like 20 things in that box? Is that really all that's good? Not that many, but there's a few others. I'll get you a full list, but the heat one is a floppy disk. It's actually a very small program. It just only gives you like 0.1%. The drowning one... Momo winced, looking at James like she was worried he'd be actually disappointed. It's a laser disc. How? James didn't think that those could actually have programs on them. Dungeon nonsense? Momo suggested. "'Kay, how often do any of us really drown, though?" he mused. "Never mind, that's the point, isn't it? Okay, get me the full list. I have a thing to do right now." "Okay." Momo nodded, vigorously enough that the spikes of her short mohawk wobbled as she did so. "And thanks for jumping me over the line like that, for the authority." "Yeah, Reed has his head in the right place most of the time, but he's looking at the rules as rules and not guidelines," James told her. "Don't hold it against him. He'll learn. We're all learning." "Yeah, well, good luck in there." Momo paused for a minute, looking uncertain, and then moved forward like she was stumbling to wrap her arms around James in a quick hug. "Thank you," she said, before awkwardly breaking off and running, which was obviously unsafe down here, to get into the line of people who all had things to ask Reed. James just shook his head, but couldn't hold off a smile as he did so. Punching in the code to the vault, he pulled open the heavy doors as the locks disengaged, and let it swing shut behind him as he walked to the containment room. The inside had been rearranged since he was down here last, mostly making use of the extra floor space, since the Camercondas now had a new space for their religious observances. The wall of trophies from the Fallen was still in place, tucked into a corner for anyone to visit. And James noticed that some superstitious engineers had left Skulljack accessory prototypes on the shelf with Virgil's orb. The back of the room, though, was very different, having been divided into secure observation rooms. The whole place was brightly lit and a lot cleaner and more organized than the outside, which was simultaneously off-putting and a huge relief. Sarah was waiting for him by the desk that was positioned to watch the cells. James knew they weren't technically a prison, but they reminded him too much of cells for him to think of them as anything else. And she was talking to Deb, who was flipping through a sheaf of papers. "Bloodwork came back confusing," Deb was saying. "It's not blood, I don't think, and despite us having a bit of a reputation with that particular hospital right now, I think they might believe this was a practical joke." She sighed. "Hey, James." "Hey, James." Sarah perked up as he walked in, echoing Deb with more cheer. "Hey, you two, and hello to our guests." James nodded politely toward the wide security glass windows of the two occupied cells. The occupants were already watching him, but at his nod both of them reacted. The two rat roaches that had been brought out of the Akashic sewer, one standing by the window, the other sitting in a ball on the bed, both flinched as he acknowledged them. They were wearing shirts that had been specially sewn for them by members of the support group, along with loose-fitting sweatpants that looked enormously baggy on the smaller one, and almost comically tight on its larger partner, accentuating the odd proportions of musculature. They weren't prisoners, at least not to the Order, but a lifetime of being imprisoned, no matter how nice anyone around here was going to treat them, was going to leave marks. That wasn't why Deb was here, though. She was here to check on the more physical marks. There was a weird effect that came from exposure to the skill orbs that Officium Mundi offered. For some people, like James, a few interesting orbs could take him down a radically new path for a hobby or profession, but for others, like Inesh, they were more concerned with skill orbs that amplified their own passions. It wasn't like anyone was 100% one or the other, but it was a kind of clear fact that Deb had wanted to be a doctor, and access to lifetimes worth of medical knowledge had only helped her to do that better. Even if she did end up on a delve or a rescue team more often than she really remembered signing up for, Deb was a healer. That was her thing. "So what's the situation?" James asked her. "Well, despite not having anything that we can clearly identify as blood, they still aren't carrying any foreign pathogens. I think we talked about this, but I did some of my own tests, and they do benefit from most vaccinations. Though whether or not they can get chickenpox is still up in the air. If they could before, they can't now. So, you were right, too. That red inflammation where the fur and chitin meets is absolutely an infection. Their bodies seem adapted to it, and they were probably made for it, but it still leaves them in intense pain. We've been using tacrolimus as a treatment after it became clear it was working like organ rejection, and that's been helping a lot, along with a standard antibiotic routine." Deb flipped through her pages, turned one to show James an outline of a rat roach form with a slew of red marks on it, and then kept going. "They have multiple badly healed fractures, scar tissue clumps, and open lesions." She frowned and looked back through the windows. "Or at least they had. They heal fast, even if they don't really heal well. Just being out of the sewer, they're getting healthier by the day. Good food and real beds probably don't hurt. I have a report on recommended nutrition here for you, too." "Deb, how smart are you?" James asked her suddenly. "You don't want to know." "Okay." James glanced at Sarah. "How about communication?" "They can understand us," Sarah said confidently, "and communicate through gestures and some words. They were gifted different languages by the sewer, so we got them overlapping yellows to cover. They both know English and Spanish, fluently." "They can't speak very well, though," Deb told him. "Undeveloped vocal cords, badly connected lungs, misshapen jaws. Speaking is painful for them, probably on purpose." Her mouth morphed into a snarl as she kept talking. "Whatever did this. The dungeon, I suppose. It's a real fucker." James gave a sad look at the two rat roaches, who were still watching James on high alert, multiple sets of eyes tracking him. "I've been talking to them, as much as I can," she said. "They're terrified, you know. Oh, they did help identify one of the weird samples Nesh brought back. They call it shaper substance. I think it's what the big one keeps using to modify herself. If we had more of it, enough of it, we could probably help them do the same." "A couple notes," Deb commented. "It is extremely painful to use, from what we can tell. Also, we call it shaper substance. They called it... Don't worry about it. We do have general anesthetic that could help," she continued. "But, yeah, that's what we've got for you. They're as healthy as I can make them, and with the proper routine, they'll only get healthier. They don't have anything that could cause problems, so... They had some nasty spores in their fur that could have caused lung damage to a human, but that's been taken care of." "Do you want to talk to them?" Sarah asked him quietly. "Yeah," James said, stepping forward, with Sarah moving to flank him. Deb, though, stepped back and excused herself politely, leaving the documentation on the desk, but knowing that more humans in the room was only going to make it too crowded. "Hey there," James said, standing in the spot where they could both see him through the windows. The rat roaches eyed him with caution. On the one hand, yes, he had been the one to get them away from where they were, away from the dungeon, to bring them here, safe. But, on the other hand, they had both seen him fight. "So, Deb tells me you don't need to quarantine anymore," James said softly. "We can get you moved to real rooms, not isolation cells. Probably today, if you want." The one that had been pacing stopped and pivoted toward the window. James noticed that he had a quartet of antennae coming off the back of his head that bobbed when he moved. The large rat roach rapidly alternated between glancing at James and the wall separating their rooms, a worried look in both kinds of eyes on his face, mouth open as he struggled to say something. "Take your time," Sarah stepped in, stopping the rat roach's frantic attempts. "There's no rush. Do you want some paper to write on?" The rat roach paused, looked down at the three clawed hands that it possessed in the front of its body, folding and unfolding fingers as it struggled to breathe. Eventually it steadied itself and looked back up, croaked out the word "together" to James. As in rooms next to each other, or one room? James asked. The rat roach held up a paw and with effort gestured with 2 raised fingers. One room, then? A nod. Yeah, that's easy. We can do that, he said simply, and saw in the other room the smaller rat roach curl itself around the pillow it was holding as it sat, muzzle twisting into an almost happy smile. Actually, hang on, are you two partners, romantic or otherwise? James asked, curious more than anything. Both rat roaches froze, and any hint of amusement vanished from their faces. James instantly realized he'd made a mistake in asking, but Sarah came to his rescue again. It's all right, she told them. That's not a problem here. A lot of us have partners. You'll probably meet James's partners at some point, inevitably. Anesh is around a lot. She smiled at them, and they relaxed just a fraction. I cannot, James said quietly. Imagine trying to both have and hide a relationship in that dungeon. He shook his head and then spoke up, telling them, But yeah, we can get you out of here, if you want. Now, even. Would you like to come upstairs and meet some people? He pressed a few buttons on the door's keypads, opening each of them with individual hisses of slightly pressurized air. The 2 rat roaches didn't move, staring at the open doors like they were a trap. People? The smaller one said. The larger one was a little more bold and took the opportunity to slip through its own door, not taking his eyes off of James or Sarah, though, before backing through the open door of the adjacent room and settling into the same standing position before the bed the small one was sitting on. People, Sarah confirmed. Nice people, mostly. Friends, if you want 'em. People to spend time with. People who won't hurt you. Her voice caught. How? One of them croaked out, before stopping, struggling to speak, and instead of using words, just held up its hands and ticked off fingers one by one. How many? James asked, and got a nod in return, a line of glowing blue saliva rolling down the rat roach's jaw as it did so, before it wiped it away, an acidic hiss coming from where it contacted its fur, and an ashamed look in its eyes. James forcibly ignored that part. There's about 100 people in the building at any given time, he said. A lot of them are Camercondas or response members, but we've got a pretty wide variety of things going on. The rat roaches shook their heads, shrinking away from the open door. It's okay, Sarah tried to mollify them, but her own composure was rapidly cracking. It's not scary. We're not... This time it was James's turn to jump in. Can I ask, what is it that bothers you? Is it the idea of other people, the number of people, or the feeling of being exposed? The rat roaches, through gestures, indicated the last 2 points, with the small one heavily emphasizing the feeling of exposure. Because you've met people before, right? In the sewer, and they hurt you. James wasn't really asking. Yes, the small one squeaked out, voice sounding both raspy and high-pitched at the same time. A stray thought in James's head collided with his path through the day, and he tapped a finger on his lips as he considered something. Would you be more comfortable in a place that has fewer people and is mostly isolated from anyone wandering in? He asked. The 2 creatures shared a look, and then gave James cautious, affirmative nods. What are you thinking? Sarah asked him. Taunton, James said. There's 20 people there, max. Most of them are constantly busy and not around all the time in our little home base, so it'll be mostly empty, but there's still contact. It's also our territory, more or less. It's a place where they can be safe. Safe with a bunch of road warriors wandering around? Sarah gave him an incredulous frown, all pursed lips and furrowed brow. Really? They wouldn't have to leave the forward base if they don't want to, and it's isolated. James shrugged. Would that be better for you two? He asked them. It's not as safe as here, but it's got fewer people. If that doesn't sound okay, we can maybe look into buying a remote cabin in the woods somewhere and setting you up there. The large rat roach looked like he was going to say something, and then stopped, like he just realized something terrible, shrinking down as he bowed his head and crouched down to the floor, no longer towering over James. Not choice, the rat roach croaked out. What? Not our choice, the smaller one rasped, seemingly having a firmer grip on his own voice, even if he did have to pant for breath after each sentence. You own us now. As soon as the words were out, Sarah was setting a hand on James's shoulder, preemptively starting to say something. James, don't. But he barely heard her. Own you, he heard himself say. Own you? The words came out angry. The rat roach scraped its shell on the floor as it pushed itself backward to the wall, moving to get away from the sudden burst of anger that was rolling off James. He took a deep breath and pushed the white-hot feeling of indignant rage away. No. He stepped into the room and almost wanted to cry as the small rat roach on the bed curled into the corner, holding the pillow between himself and James like a protective shield. But whatever they expected, all James did was reach down an open hand to the rat roach that was currently cowered on the ground. Please stand up, he asked, a sad note in his voice. It took over a minute, but eventually, realizing that he wasn't at least directly going to be punished or hurt, the dungeon creation reached up one of its many main arms to place a chitin-plated hand in James's. James gave an oof of exertion as he helped the rat roach to his feet, not quite realizing how heavy he was going to be, and then stepped back. We don't own you, he said, firmly and quietly. No one does. You aren't property or assets or anything except for people. When anyone here asks you if you have a preference, that is your choice. Even if you're not asked, speak up. We'll work with you. We want... James trailed off, trying to figure out how to express what he really did want. We want you to heal. We want you to see the future with us. Even if you don't want to join up, you're under our umbrella. We'll do whatever we can to keep you safe, okay? Forever. There was a long silence. James sighed and turned to go, not sure he had said anything that would make a difference here. He was standing in the doorway, about to let Sarah know that she should get them a room and leave them be, when he heard a hissing gasp behind him and felt a tap on his shoulder. James turned around, careful not to spin or jump or make any sudden movements, and faced the smaller of the two rat roaches. He had slid off the bed without a sound and tapped James with the extra arm that originated just under the back of his right shoulder blade. He stood there, trembling, claw still in the air between them, staring up at James with a defiant look in his eyes. The larger one looked like it expected James to just kill his partner right there on the spot, which made James's heart break all over again. Yeah? James asked softly. The rat roach flicked its hands, and it took James a second to realize it was speaking sign language. It took him another second to realize that he understood that, and he thanked whatever yellow orb had given him this unlikely skill, however long ago it had happened. You swear? The rat roach asked. James almost made a joke about how he swore a lot, actually, but instead he just replied in the same language, with fingers that weren't used to using it. I promise, yes, he said. You have a choice with us, always. Why? The sleek, clearly terrified rat roach asked. I don't understand. I think you do, James said out loud. It's why you knew you had to leave the sewer. It's why your partner looks ready to try to fight the entire building if I threaten you. He nodded over to the larger of the two, who had one furred hand extended into wicked-looking claws, and the other two balled into fists. It's because kindness is worth it, even if it's hard. Compassion is valuable, even if it's scary. Love is worth protecting, even if it's painful. James looked down at his own hand, broken until very recently, and held it out slowly to the rat roach. You have been alone and starved and hurt for so long it might seem like that's normal, and you're the strange ones for wanting anything different. But that's fucked up, and that's not the world I want to live in. The rat roach looked down at James's offered hand, staring at it with 5 eyes at different focuses, before he slowly extended a half-furred, half-shelled hand of his own, and placed the palm cautiously against James's own. James smiled and gave a light grip back to the rat roach, trying not to think about how spiky the coarse fur was on his skin. Now, he said, Go hug your boyfriend, and you two take some time to decide what you want. You've got time, but I do think the best option for you might be our secondary site. It's got fresh air, and it'll be funny to me personally to add another thing to JP's pile of tasks. Sarah swatted him on the arm. Don't be mean, she said. Also, you're going to confuse them. Wait, the tall and muscled rat roach said, stopping James as he turned to go. Yeah? It took some time to marshal his voice, and then he asked slowly, What is a hug? And that was it for James's composure. He couldn't keep back tears any longer. He jerked his head to look away, a hand covering his mouth as he bit down on one of his fingers, hot liquid pooling in the corners of his eyes. There was, he had figured, a finite limit to the amount of cruelty in the world, an upper bound, something beyond which it wasn't quite possible to be any worse. And now he was given a front row seat to the massive flashing red letters that told him that he had been wrong. Sarah wrapped her arms around his back and thunked her head into his neck, pulling him close and throwing him off balance in surprise. But he didn't fall, and she helped him stabilize, and he put his own arm around her shoulders and just tried to be okay for a minute. This is a hug, Sarah said. It's something you share with people when they need it, or when you need it, or to say hello or goodbye, or just because you want to. It's a very flexible gesture, she told them. In their temporary room, two new people, who had secretly loved each other and survived injuries beyond anything that anyone in the Order had, who had taken a wild chance on freedom, shared a real hug, for what might be the first time in their entire lives. James kept crying, but at least he smiled while he did it. Standing on the second-floor balcony, looking down at the cracked and damaged floor of a police station's lobby, JP crossed his arms and muttered to himself, This is absolutely not what I meant when I said I wanted help, James. Then he shook his head, took another swallow from the beer he'd liberated from a local grocery store, and turned to make his way downstairs. He apparently had a bunch of new arrivals to welcome to the project.